Ladies and gentlemen, this is Coralie Whitby, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center and Nightlight Christian Adoptions. And we are so pleased that each of you has joined us today for the webinar, It's Never Too Late, Telling Donor Kids About Their Origins. And our presenter today is Probasco, and she is a wonderful partner and friend of the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center. She established Adoption and Fertility Resources in 1993, and she later went on with Adoption and Fertility Resources to establish the first regional adoption agency fertility clinic partnership in the U.S. They locate general Kansas City area, and she's had 24 births to date. They also is the CEO of Clinical Counseling Associates. So we are thrilled to have Kris. She has 25, 30 years of experience working with donor children. So now a bit of housekeeping. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. To really encourage you to enter your questions as you think of them, because we'll all the questions at the end. If you decide to wait to the end, you might forget what that question was. So I'm going to encourage you to ask these questions as they come to your mind. Simply click on the Q&A panel in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. Your question into the dialog box and click the send button. If you happen to be in the full screen view, you can click on the question mark icon on the toolbar in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. This will open the Q&A panel on your screen only. When you submit your question, it will be visible to all of the panelists, but it will not be visible to the other attendees. We expect the presentation to last for about 45 minutes with 15 minutes for Q&A. Following the presentation, if we will answer all the questions that we have time to answer. We may stay on past the hour, but you're welcome to go at that time. We will send everyone who is attending today a white paper with all the questions. So if you ask a question, we don't get to it during the presentation, we will answer that question in the follow-up documentation that gets sent out to all attendees. Here you see the technical support number for WebEx. If you are having any problems, please contact them directly. It would be a good idea to write this down so that you have that handy in case you lose connection during the presentation. So here we go, and this is Kris.
Good morning, everyone. I assume it's morning for everybody. I'm in the central zone here about 11 o'clock. I want to thank Corey and all of the crew at the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center. It's always one of my favorite things to be doing webinars with them, and I learn as much as everyone does in preparing this. This is a great topic. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a wonderful topic, and I really have gotten the idea for this from a lot of my clients that come back and say, we didn't really get it together to talk to our child in the younger years, but now we're ready to think about it and figure out how to proceed. So if we miss the early years, which we've done webinars on before and really focused on the early years, no, we didn't ruin anything. Where you can proceed with talking to the older child. So, of course, in the telling process, there's the parent preparation, there's the younger years in telling, the middle years, and the adolescent years. We're going to be focusing on each stage, but perhaps a little bit more on the middle years than we have before. Next slide. So, a lot of people, when they are able to become pregnant through a donor conception, their thought process is, this may not even happen. There's embarrassment connected to the infertility. There may be some unresolved grief of using a donor conception, and so they just enjoyed parenting and really didn't even want to think about how the child came into their lives. And then 13 years passed, and so what do we do now? How do we start the story, and how can we do it the best way possible? Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm identifying with lots of infertile couples that go through lengthy fertility treatments to try to have a joint biological child. So the telling process may bring up some of those feelings of yesteryears, and they really need lots of support and encouragement to begin the story. A typical infertility patient that I see, and probably a lot have gone through, is lots of cycles of IVF, second opinions, third opinions, lots of money. I saw a couple last week that spent $75,000 on their fertility treatment. That's a lot of money, and then they're still without a child. So, and a lot of you know and understand the investment of time and emotions and hope and that roller coaster and that dream child. So there's been a lot of emotional work in experiencing infertility. Usually the process is 2 to 3 years, and then couples come to the end with needing to use donor conception, or that becomes reality for them, and it becomes their next choice in bringing a child into their family. Slide, please. So faced with donor conception, it's really interesting that a lot of the couples go back to, well, it's only a cell. So for their cells, they were willing to do a lot to try to get their cells to develop. But when they talk about a donor conception, they talk about it's only a cell. It really doesn't mean much. So they have a lot of diligence around trying to select the best donor, trying to select the best family, wanting to have physical characteristics that's familiar within their family. So the fantasy child and their child and our child, like they're going to own a child, is some of the decision making that unresolved grief demonstrates. And really the medical community, for most part, they're not really encouraging people to ask questions or encouraging them to meet their donor or to think a lot about their donor. So it's just part of the next process rather than the next choice in bringing a child into the family. So we do have lots of denial, and denial is a wonderful defense mechanism until you're really faced with the needs of the child. Slide, please. So people get stuck in denial. So being anonymous as possible means we don't have to look at a picture. We don't really have to see them as a person. They're just, a group of cells, and we need those cells to be able to be parents, but they can really deny the hurt that they're experiencing. And, when you have hurt that's wrapped with shame and embarrassment, you have some attachment difficulties. And so you attach to a child basically through your loss rather than through your celebration that this child's going to be your child to parent. So that denial will be there, and the pain will be there as you're progressing to talk to your older child. So it's really important to understand that this is your business to get through, and you can get through it in order to feel as good as possible in proceeding with talking to the child. The next, please. So pregnancy is achieved. We want to be the best parents possible. So we're in the process of accepting those losses and really in some ways redoing the grief process that we didn't experience to begin with. The losses, if we don't process them as adults, then they tend to be the responsibility of the child. The child fixed my infertility, which really the child gave parents an opportunity to become parents and to parent a child with extra responsibilities when you choose a donor conception. So we want to be very mindful of completing this grief process. Next slide, please. So moving the focus from parents' hurt and uncomfortableness to we do want to be the best parents. We want to equip this child with as much knowledge as we have regarding who they are so they can progress in life knowing all of their identity. So in releasing the story, it is like releasing balloons. And I had a couple come in, I think a couple weeks ago, and they walked the door and they said, we released our, it's either a 1,000-pound gorilla or a 10,000-pound gorilla. It's been released. And they just had smiles on their faces, and the telling process went so well that they just needed to report back in, and I was really happy to be able to see them. So the story is the child's story. It's a family story. Releasing that to the knowledge of the child is very, very, very important. Next, please. So in getting prepared, we accept the differences. I think the adoption community in particularly has done so much research on the adoption experience of children that they pretty well have gotten it down that 50% of who we are is by nature and 50% by nurture. So, of course, the child would not be able to reach their potential without good nurturing in their family and to be able to have their genetics become who they are. So genetics is part of our core. It's part of who we are biologically, who it has social imprints, personality imprints, and, of course, medical imprints. So the parent's job in preparation to tell an older child is to also learn as much as they can about the genetic family. This may mean calling the sperm bank back or the egg donor process or your clinic to say, you didn't ask many questions 10 years ago, but we want to get as much information as we can because we're planning on telling our child or children about their donor conception. Next slide, please. So being as open as possible provides a resource medically for the child. They are understanding that they have a family that they started with, and that is the family, and they assisted in giving of their genetics, whether it's sperm, egg, or embryo, that another family was willing to help the child be born. And the openness also gives the child a greater understanding of their story, so they can start putting their puzzle pieces together. The goal of the telling is really for the child to understand all that there is to understand, and for the parents to give them all the information. Of course, that's, again, over time. Even if you're telling at a later date, there's a building block process that can go on with telling the story. We know family therapists over and over will tell you that secrecies cause difficulties. I'm part of a family counseling business, and we talk often about the secret got out of the closet, and now they're trying to deal with it, and they feel like I had a 30-year-old come and talk to me about finding out that they were conceived by donor, and he says, I have the emotions of a child in thinking about this. It's hard for me to get this into my adult mind to figure it out. I'm reacting like I'm a child with this information, and I think that's really what the path of keeping secrets does for families. Next slide, please. So we got the bridge to cross. We've been on that bridge several times and found our way through the infertility, found our way through pregnancy, found our way to parent the child and get support from family and friends. So this is another bridge that we're going to be going over. Path may seem difficult, but really when you get into the explanations and get those balloons set free, it is pretty powerful for all family members. So you're making decisions in the telling process. That's all about your child and your child's best interest. To know how they came into the family is very powerful information that they will carry for the rest of their lives. So having a child start figuring that out is very helpful for them into their adulthood. Next slide, please. But our kids don't know. It's a secret. What are we going to do? Well, when the secret is shared in a very open, honest way, and the parents talk about, we had a difficult time having children. We wanted children so much, and we were able to be pregnant with you, and we were able to be there when you were born. It's just so exciting. And then there's other parts of your birthing that and your conception that you need to know. So then it becomes their normal. We really see this with kids when they understand it as younger kids or a little bit older kids. It becomes their normal. It's their story. So it just fits who they are because their parents are proud of their decision and proud of the opportunity to parent their children. Next, please. So why didn't you tell me earlier? I remember 11-year-olds saying, well, gosh, isn't this kind of old news for me knowing now? So I want to be really sure that you don't say, well, we tried to protect you. You're protecting me from is just part of who I am. We didn't want you to feel different. Everybody's different. Everybody looks different, has different personalities, different assets, different liabilities. So this is just who they are, and it's such a cause of celebration. So, of course, focus on the truth. And I think you can rightfully say when you're talking to middle years, pre-adolescent years, or, we thought that you would be able to understand this now, and we wanted to make sure that you were told before you took over your medical history or you tried to figure out, what kind of personality and characteristics that you have as your person. So it becomes their story, and it's such a powerful story when the secret is gone and the releasing happens for the parents. Next slide, please. So, and this is very, very interesting, and I don't know if many of you know this, but through the adoption community as well as the donor conception community, people say that they always sensed there was something wrong. Because secrets have a lot of protective feelings around them. They do have shame and embarrassment with it. So when that's present, when that environment is present, then kids often will say, well, I knew something was off. I didn't know exactly what it was, but now I know, and no big deal. This is real. My parents did a great thing. Look how wonderful I am. So the secrets never stay secrets. If families were more open, we probably wouldn't be in our family counseling business as much as we are. But it's far easier to tell a younger child than it is an older adult. When it comes out, there may be feelings of betrayal, but I don't see that as much with families that are very open and very honest and really say what was been on their heart and their mind. And I always knew we were going to be telling you. I just just needed a little help in figuring out when that was going to be. The honesty and integrity that all parents want children to have is important because they will be sharing the story, and so they will be demonstrating the honesty and integrity by sharing the story. So it's continue of the value that parents place with honesty and integrity. So it's another demonstration of we wanted you to know your truth. your story, and we're so happy and proud of it that we know you will be too. And speaking about the donor conception story, Kelly, often makes it just part of the family story. Again, it becomes the normal. So, once the story's been told, check in every now and then, try to see what they're thinking or feeling, and so you're giving the message that we're okay to talk about this. You can ask any question you desire that you have, and we'll try to figure out an answer, that we're working together on this. This is our family business, so to speak, and our family story. And again, we are so proud of how it has turned out. Okay, slide, please. We again celebrate. You're going to hear me say that a lot. The telling gives a positive attitude about their conception, birth, and genetic family. Kids tend to want to see pictures of the donors if there is any, kind of know their personality and what kind of social activities they were involved in, what kind of hobbies they have. So they just want to know the genetic family as people, and it becomes part of who they are, part of that family genetically. So the knowledge really helps them incorporate that into their mind and soul and body to become the person they are to become. With all alternative parenting, the goal is to share everything you know and for the child to understand. So the disclosure is very much enhanced by those honest stories. If you make up stories to make it sound better, then you're going to have to remember what I said, and that child's going to know exactly what you said. So you want to be honest, so you know what you have shared. Okay, next slide, please. There's never a right time. You may create a right time, but deciding to talk to your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 14-year-old is the time that you've decided to share the story. So I think there's some relief for parents that are parenting a child by donor conception, for the parents or the single person to say, well, I always knew I was going to tell them. It was just kind of getting my mind wrapped around it, and then have a child a little bit more prepared environmentally, like from school activities and science classes, to really understand the birds and the bees of all of this. So when you believe that all those ingredients are together and the grief has pretty well resolved for the family, it's time to tell. And we always say rather now than later. You could put together a life book that could be shared with the child of their beginnings and all the people that were very important to them. And we really wanted to have a child, and we know what the heartache is thinking about not being able to be parents. But we have been blessed with you, and we wouldn't make any different decision. You were meant to be our child. And then the whole story. Next slide, please. So in creating the life book, you can do this at any stage of the telling of the child, is, this is what Mom and Dad looked like before you were born. Can you believe how skinny we were and how young we looked? And, we went to lots of doctor's offices trying to figure out if we were able to have a baby, and talked to a lot of people. We even talked to counselors and doctors and genetic people and adoption agencies, whatever that journey was, in order for our next step in bringing you home. And we had a positive pregnancy test. You can't imagine the excitement, and a little scary too, because we knew that not all positive pregnancy tests continue to be positive. Next slide, please. Yes, we had lots of doctor's offices that we visited. We had helpers, and if you have a picture of your the sperm donor, egg donor, embryo placement, then that would be good here. If you don't, then maybe having a picture of an egg or a picture of an embryo or pictures of lots and lots of sperm could go in at that time too. Sure, you can dig up some pictures of being pregnant, and you haven't seen these for a while, and I don't know if you even have seen this, but this is how proud we were of Mommy's uterus growing and you inside. The hospital pictures, all the people that were involved in coming to see you, they all wanted you in our family. We wanted you, and we were meant to be your parents. And then the welcome home. I think there's probably pictures of the balloons outside, a stork where it says it's a boy, it's a girl. So all the celebration of bringing you to our family, doing that concretely by a life book can be really helpful in their understanding. Next slide, please. So the years. I have 3 daughters. Yes, they do this. They do. So the reality starts becoming seeping in for the child when they've learned of their origins in this period of time. It takes a little bit of time to have that really soak in, but when it has, then the child is starting to make starting to have information be more clear. Next slide, please. Gathering as much information about the donor will allow you to answer questions. So the information needs to be as honest as possible. You can write letters to the clinics. You can write letters to the sperm bank, egg donation, your fertility center, saying, I know we weren't quite as interested in information before, but you don't have that information, but we sure are now. And so this could be a letter you could show the child that you tried to get more information. You understand it's important for them to have the information about their genetic family so they can understand who they are. And it's best to get the telling of this information and as much of it as possible into the heads of the kids before they're in adolescence. So in adolescence, they don't hear well. They're selective hearing, and so if they're hearing about their donor conceptions at adolescence, still doable. You're probably going to have a little bit more rebellion with the story than if you would have told them in the middle years. So all extremes are possible, from not wanting to talk about it to talking about it free, but keeping the lines of communication open is very, very, very important. So if you haven't had any questions asked for a couple months, just drop it right in saying, I just drove by the hospital where you were born. I was thinking, oh, my gosh, okay. Now, wondering if you remembered that, or wondering if there's anything else that's floating around your mind that we could help with answers. Slide, please. So prepare a child for the technological conception, in that, and then how babies are made. I have a great story with my oldest daughter. She's the one that broke us in as parents, and she wanted to know baby making questions pretty early in her life, 4 or 5. She wanted it all down and wanted to know exactly how it happened. And she was so proud of herself that we would be in grocery stores and she would say, there's a pregnant woman, or there was a pregnancy on the cover of a magazine, and she would just grin and say, I know how that baby got in there. So, the information will be flowing, their mind will be flowing, and sex education with family and school start making more sense. Okay, so I had a sperm donation that helped. There was a man that was part of a family that helped mom and dad have a baby. So when they learn about sperm and egg, then they know that their sperm came from another family. They'll have that down concrete. And lots of questions and empathy for their questions is very helpful also. And we have a kit there from American Girl. I really like that picture. Okay, next slide, please. So we do have a genetic connection to another family. So using the word sperm and egg is very important, using the word uterus. So those are accurate words so they don't confuse the child as they hear those terms in school or wherever they may be seeing that. So what it means is that they have a connection to another family that's very important, and there will be times in their life that it's more important than others, but they are as a person is what they're developing now. So it affects their personhood. It affects their medical records in the future. And so we really want you to be prepared for all that when you go into adulthood. Okay, next slide, please. So aren't they cute? So the ahas are really coming during this time frame, that they got it figured out how babies were made with the telling of the story. Then they're figuring out that they came from part of who they are came from another family. And Mom and Dad were so excited that they were able to be pregnant and give birth to me. And, I'm such a wonderful kid, so obviously it was a great decision. So it becomes part of their self-esteem, part of their self-worth, that Mom and Dad really wanted me to be here. Okay, next slide, please. So the question may arise at the most unexpected moments. That's true. So go with the flow. If you're in a spot where you really aren't able to have much communication, saying, good question, let's get to that when we're in the car, or good question, I'm going to write a note right now, and then we'll talk about that later. So the child feels free to ask questions. And a lot of questions come up when you're driving in the car, in the grocery store, when you're in church. Lots of things come to their mind, and they may just have that question stated. So it may not be appropriate at that particular time, but you keep your promise. And we'll get to the question. I'm going to write it down, and we'll talk about it when we can. So the message is, I feel comfortable with your story. It's our story. Mom and Dad went to a lot of work to have you come. We wouldn't change a thing. We just want you to know about yourself. And it's pretty normal for girls to ask more questions than boys. I think that's typical no matter how kids come to families. And lots of families have lots of stories. So this becomes your family story, or is your family story. Slide, please. Answering the questions. Again, it's best to have empathy. If I was you, I would want to know too. If you're in an open donor situation, then you may contact the donor sibling registry and see if there's any families connected to your particular donor situation that may have more information. Write down, and the next time we have contact with the donor sibling registry or with the family, then we'll have that question and we'll be sure and get it answered. But the empathy is so important. If I was you, I would want to know that too. So we're going to work until we can find out if we can get that answer. If not, then we're going to talk about what it could be, what could be the answer. Next slide, please. The Adolescent Years, who am I? So this can be also a telling time. It may have a few more difficulties because the adolescents are looking for something to rebel against. And this may just give them a little bit more ammunition, shall we say, in being a teenager. Next slide, 2. So for middle years, they really starting the process of who I am externally. And sex education, of course, is making more sense. For the adolescents, their identity process is more internally. So when you have that process going on, there could be behaviors that may indicate that they're angry about this, and I don't want to have to be that person, and they're also learning about science and DNA and reproduction, and the teens may identify themselves as, kind of science necessary project, but it took lots of science in order for them to be born. So they're just processing that all internally. So again, keep the answers going, keep the questions going is very, very, very healthy. Next slide, please. So this is a time in middle years that we really have the parents have the ownership of the genetic information. If there's any communication, that's usually done from parent to parent, and it's all based on mutual agreements. But in the adolescent years, a child takes ownership, going on Facebook, going on the Internet. A lot of folks can find people, and the teenagers tend to go there to try and find out any other further information. So hopefully the use is something that is managed within the household, that the adolescent would be able to say, I connected through the donor sibling registry with this person or that person. So, but however, that would mean that you would give a password out. So it's your decision with the donor sibling registry of when the child receives the password for them to connect themselves. But just know that their job in adolescence is all their puzzle pieces and put it together. So they take ownership of themselves. Now, you say, when they're 18, they'll probably have it all together. Okay, being a parent, I'm saying probably 22, that they have really the ownership of all that they are. Next slide, please. The teen's role is to understand their story and look at similarity and differences. So this will also be a time that they'll be curious about, does the donor have some of the same hobbies I like? What's their personality like? So have that information if you have it, or trying to understand, well, honey, you really like arts. And thinking Mom and Dad don't really have that. So I'm thinking that may be one of the characteristics that you received from your donor. And, boy, that's turned out well for you. Again, empathy, they are who they are, and accepting that this is your decision of how they came into the family. Adolescents have challenges overall. You need to make sure that they don't get away with more than once saying, I don't have to talk to you, you're not my real parent. So you would then respond of, kind of am the real parent, day-to-day parent, and, obviously we haven't talked about how you came to the family for a while, but you're an hour late guy, so there's consequences for that. So separate discipline and parenting from their story. And the job is for the parents to tell everything they know, and for the adolescent, early adult to understand. Next slide, please. Form their identity. I think I've already talked about. They also take charge of who they tell and the consequences that follows. Now, you may have had earlier experiences with the child of telling their friends or asking their family if they knew how they came into the family. But this could be more of a challenge with the adolescents, maybe talking more about this, and the consequences are that not everybody will understand, and so there may be kind of some conflict that hopefully they will talk to you about as they're trying to figure all this out. So distinguishing again from the conception and parenting responsibility, the first very fine line, the bottom line is we wanted to be your parents. We wanted you, the family. We just went through a lot of roads in order to get you. And, not everybody's going to understand. So you may want to think about more privacy about this decision and about your our donor conception, let's just kind of figure this out together. Slide, please. Owning story. Again, they may share with peers. They may not understand. The parents need to understand that the child really is in charge of who they're going to become, and they're in your sight more than they are in your sight, except when they're sleeping. So have lots of interaction with their peers and society, and this again encourages them to become who they're going to become. Next slide, please. Okay, I don't want to leave out the younger years, and younger years is probably a more appropriate time to talk, but again, does not mean that you lost the boat. Parents that are willing to talk to children young really has the advantage of the child never remember being told. So if you told a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, you read one of those wonderful books that are out there to your early age child, the sense will be, I never remember being told, I always knew. The adolescents, middle years and adolescence, there probably is going to be a place and time that they remember being told, but does not mean that it's going to be totally difficult. Okay, more. A tone of voice communicates pride, love, and celebration, no matter when the telling is. So the years gives parents more of a practice time, so they're hearing all these words that coming out of their mouth that will have a lot more significance as the child grows, but it really helps them get a firm spot in the telling process. Next slide, please. Parents can be using questions as they're starting to ask questions, baby-making questions, or there's an adoption in the family, and so you have to explain how this baby came to one of your family members through adoption, and that in a lot of ways we went through an adoption process in accepting genetics of another family, and this in our family was meant to be. We were meant to be your parents. Shouldn't start asking baby-making questions about age 3. By the time they're 3, they know every family member and who they belong to. They also are aware of pregnancy, babies being born. So there's going to be a little bit more baby-making questions. And then, so for this age child is, honey, Mommy and Daddy had trouble having a baby, so the doctor said that having an egg donor would be appropriate choice for us. So you remember your egg came from another family, or Mom and Dad decided that we were going to choose embryo donation, and both your genetics came from another family, or you started with another family. So they're hearing the words, they're hearing the gestures and the celebration that's connected. Next slide, please. Here's our books. When I see couples that are doing either sperm donation, egg donation, or embryo placement, pull out my book, Before You Were Born. This wonderful series of books that explain all the different ways that families come in by production. They also have books about IVF, frozen embryo transfer that can be helpful also for genetic parents that place their embryos with another family. They can be talking to their child about being made through IVF, and you can also throw in the donor, the sperm donor. So these are wonderful resources. All the other resources are very, very good too. Next slide, please. So message is clear. We wanted to have children. We look for the opportunity to point out events and places where the child is connected so they get the concrete thinking accomplished. Next, please. So choosing not to share is not protecting the child. All you have to do is listen to a late discovery adoptee or donor-conceived person, and you will know that it caused trauma and disturbance, and they felt betrayed. So children that know growing up and know their circumstances is just part of who they are, and they know their parents are honest and with them. So, and the goal is for the younger child to never remember being told, because they always knew. Okay, next slide, please. For children of all ages, it's never too late. The Donor Conception Network out of out of England has written a series. Parents have written a series of 4 different books of telling at different times, and has stories from other parents and gives really good guidance. So the most important thing is for parents to be honest, we value who you are, and we couldn't love you anymore, and we were meant to be your parents, and you were meant to be our child. Next slide, please. So it's really true. I think moms tend to talk more about the donor story than dads, but we want dads to be involved too. And if mom is hearing from the child kind of a dad question, maybe she could clue him in, and he could bring the subject of, I was thinking, I think maybe you would be thinking about this, or you would be thinking about that, and, let's have a good conversation about it. The kids really are attuned to, if there's one parent that is not genetically connected to them, when they realize that, they want them to be okay. And so, not in a Pollyanna way, but we want you to say, if we could, we'd choose you 100 times over. Again, you were meant to be our child, to parent. Next slide, please. There may be some sadness with finding out about this. You guys were adoptive families and the families of donor-conceived kids. There was sadness for them too. So, boy, I've been there. I understand, and it just takes a lot of thinking and feeling, and you may be angry at times or sad about times, but they would be angry if they felt lied to, but they will not be as angry if they feel that mom and dad chose the right time to tell me, and I'm so glad that they chose to do that. Now I can figure things out. Next slide, please. So welcome the child's questions, answer them honestly. So to get back to them, be sure you write it down if you're going to get back to them, and then keep their promise. So know their questions are valuable, and they're very valuable. As a therapist, I have lots of questions that I hear daily, and sometimes they're questions I haven't heard before. So, having answers and trying to figure things out is just one of your child's jobs in developing to who they're going to become. Next slide, please. So, giving the rewards. Telling the truth definitely adds to honesty and a secure relationship. You don't have that fear out there of, will Aunt Sue tell them? Or I had a family that came in and they thought about 50 people about the donor conception when we were all adding them up, and wasn't planning on telling the child. Oh my gosh, really a big setup. So make sure you're the ones that tell the child your wonderful story and your story that's full of pride. The telling process, the celebration, will definitely carry them through the rest of their lives, and they will be able to tell others that, Mom and Dad went through a lot of difficult times and difficult choices to get me here, but man, they're my parents, and I have genetic connections to another family. They'll get it clear. Next slide, please. Am I done?
The end. The
end. My gosh.
So thank you, Kris. That was wonderful. I'm going to throw this slide back up here in case anyone has any questions that they want to ask. So there it is. you click on the question mark on, and that'll open the window. And while we're waiting to go through these questions, I want to remind you that in November there is no webinar. We wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And when I threw this slide together, I couldn't believe that Thanksgiving was being around the corner. That was maybe 3 weeks ago or so. So it's amazing, but it's fast approaching. And our December webinar, we're also very excited about. It's embryo adoption, dispelling the myths. And embryo adoption is such a new form of adoption, and it's all intertwined with IVF and assisted reproductive technology, and there are lots of misconceptions out there held by a lot of people. So this webinar will attempt to look at some of these misconceptions that are geared more towards adoption agencies so that you can accurately present these things to your clients and know the truth. So I'm going to go through some of these questions. Well, I'm not seeing. I thought there were some questions here, but they're more like housekeeping questions about being able to print the slides. So if you have a question, I'm going to encourage you to enter it. I think the webinar has been done multiple times, and it's really getting honed and hits the target. So I'm hoping that means that it was a wonderful webinar and people just don't have questions. Questions about the slides, we were trying to make these available to all of you to print out prior to the webinar. Now, you might have gotten an email from Amy. If you were unable to do that and print out prior to the webinar so that you can write your notes next to the slides as you're listening, all the slides will be sent to each of our attendees. You will still be welcome to pull that outline off out of a Dropbox, actually, in an email link that we would send you. And if you want the link and you want to go back and listen to that webinar again and run notes, we can send you that link. So I'm going to wait a few more seconds here.
Well, can I say a few things, Corley?
Yeah.
Well, the fact that I love doing these so much is that Kimberly and I, and then Corley and I, have the system worked out. So we schedule a conference call, and I just talk. My favorite thing is talking, of course. So I just talk, and then they get them in slides. So it's just a wonderful thing to have this coordination available, and really to pinpoint what the need is and who our audience is, and celebrate families. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah. And through that process of giving this webinar a few times, we really honed in on the middle years, right, and that people had questions about that. So I think because we've done this so many times, Kris, and it really have made it hit the points that we wanted to hit, right, that we're answering questions before they are even asked.
Yeah, that's always good. That's a good event. Yeah.
I'm going to wait a few more seconds. I just don't see any. There's lots of people who want to have the slides, and I have some people who have posted that this was a helpful webinar, so I'm going to take that as being a successful webinar.
Okay,
and,
good.
I'm just not seeing any more questions, so I say goodbye to all of you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you in December for embryo adoption, dispelling the myths. And I think Kris is going to be one of our presenters at a webinar as well, so you will want to join us on December 12th. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.